make me sick! Hey baby, got a lot to learn. I've been down and now it's your turn. Never guess that sees through you. Take a chance if you think you do. You make me sick. You make me sick. Hey baby, got a lot to say. Don't go treating me that way. You always thought you were something new. You never wanted my point of view. You make me sick. You make me sick.
Okay, let's do this. Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Lou and I am a photography student and I do videos on here. I do visual diary type of videos, but I also want to start talking about cameras on here. And today is gonna be my first attempt at sort of reviewing a camera, which I'm trying to do this in a more like free-spirited fashion and just kind of ramble about the camera instead of like giving you a very technical breakdown, even though I did write some stuff down so I don't completely lose it. I want to talk about a camera that was kind of a gateway drug into my DIGICAM early 2000s camera addiction. And the camera that I want to talk about is the Fujifilm Finepix F31FD, which is this beautiful little guy. I found this camera through Allie from 1 Month to Cameras, and something about like the things that she said in her review of this just sounded very appealing to me, so I picked one up. These have gotten a bit pricey recently. I've seen them like go for around 150 euros, which is crazy expensive. I would never pay that amount of money for this camera, but I got one that is like pretty beaten up. Like it has been used and abused, and you can kind of tell because there are so many bumps and scratches in here, and like all the rubber parts are gone and it's just really beaten up. But I got it for 20 bucks, so I was kind of okay with it. I have kind of fallen in love with this, and I just want to go into this a little bit and why I think it's a great camera. So we're talking about a 2006 point-and-shoot camera. So it is now 17 years old, and it has a 6.3 megapixel super CCD sensor, which means the photodiodes are arranged in a octagonal pattern, which is supposed to like optimize the resolution and the detail in the images. And it has a native 4:3 aspect ratio, which is my absolute favorite because it always reminds me of the ratio of 6:5 medium format cameras, which I shoot the Mamiya 6:5, so it's kind of my favorite aspect ratio to have. It shoots JPEG only, and the maximum resolution is around 2800 by 2100 pixels. It does not support shooting RAW. It shoots JPEG in like a couple of different sizes. It does shoot the JPEGs in 3 different color profiles, which you can select. It shoots standard, chrome, and black and white. So that's kind of like the 2006 version of what Fuji has obviously kind of developed now as their film simulations. It has an 8 to 24 millimeter lens, which in full frame focal equivalent is around 36 to 108 millimeters. The ISO on this thing goes up to 1600. I do not shoot it up to 1600, but it has different auto modes for the ISO. So you can select ISO auto up to 400, up to 800, or up to 1600. I tend to shoot it up to 800. I think that's kind of the sweet spot. It takes XD memory cards, which is this old memory card format that was used by Olympus and Fujifilm. So they look like this. And it takes NP95 batteries, which you can still definitely get these on eBay. I bought a pack of 2 for 15 euros, I believe. Battery life is amazing. I have never, ever run out of battery on one of these things. I've gone without charging or changing a battery for I think up to like 4 or 5 days, which is insane to me. As you can see, this does not have a viewfinder, which usually is a deal breaker for me, but on this camera I was really pleasantly surprised because even in sunny situations I think the screen is pretty usable, which is not always the case. Like I don't tend to use viewfinders on point and shoots anyways, so I feel like this is totally fine. The body is metal, so it's a metal construction, but some parts are plastic, and I think there was like a rubber thingy supposed to be on the grip here that just came right off apparently at some point. The ergonomics are not that great, but it's definitely usable. I wouldn't say that this is necessarily super pocketable. If you're like wearing skinny jeans, this might not be the one. But for me personally, I don't have any issues with it, and I like that it's a bit thicker because it feels like it's not going to break in half at any point. But the build quality is great. Like, I can't say anything bad about it. Also, another thing that I kind of hate about some DIGICAMs is that the flash tends to be located really close to the shutter button, which makes me cover the flash with my middle finger pretty often. So I'm kind of glad that it is on the opposite side, which I don't know, that's just like a really weird pet peeve of mine, but that's something that I really enjoyed about this. There's a mode dial on top, and it has like a movie mode, aperture or shutter priority mode, which I don't ever use, a manual mode, which just means that you have, it's pretty much auto mode, but with exposure compensation, then a full auto mode, a natural mode, which I do tend to use, but I'm like gonna go into that later, and a kind of like anti-shake mode, which is just bumping up the ISO. Like, the mode dial is one of the issues that I have because it is like pretty flimsy. So if you take it out of your pocket, it tends to change the mode. And because the movie mode is the last one on the mode dial before it stops, I do tend to take a quick video instead of a photo, which is super annoying because that just kind of ruins it as a street camera for me. If I put it in my pocket and then while taking it out, it just activates the video mode because I just can't react quick enough to like turn it back. But again, that's like a very specific issue, but like just be aware of the fact that the mode dial just tends to switch very easily. But I just want to go into like my favorite parts about this camera because there are a lot of great things. For example, for a 2006 point and shoot camera, the autofocus is really good. It's really snappy. There's not a lot of shutter lag. It just is a really snappy camera, which I love. The main thing, though, that I love about this camera is the lens, because it has such a weird quality. It is not that sharp, but also not that soft. It's kind of right in between where it looks very natural, I feel like. It's just kind of, it is on the softer side, I'm not gonna lie, but I really like that. The movie mode, even though it's annoying that it kind of switches on by itself sometimes, is really cute. I do like to shoot video with this because it has a really trashy, nostalgic quality. It's not as bad as some of the cameras that I've been shooting, like the Canon PowerShot G5, for example. I wish modern cameras had that. When the camera is off, you can just hold the playback button and it'll turn on the camera in playback mode without actually activating the lens, which I think is so nice, and I wish modern cameras still had that because I use that feature so much on all of these old digicams. The flash is something that I really like about this. It looks quite natural. It's not too harsh, and in combination with that lens that it is a bit softer, something about it is just a really good combination. I just kind of love the way the flash looks. Another thing that I like about this camera is that the metering is pretty good. I always have it on center weighted metering. I've never used another metering mode on this, so I don't know about the spot metering, for example, but with center weighted metering, I think this works really well. And another thing that I really enjoy about this, which so many cameras are missing, is that it has a quick menu, and the quick menu is actually really helpful because it lets you select the ISO, the resolution, and the color profile, and those three are kind of like what I need to access. But I do have a couple of issues with this camera that I really want to get into. So even though I like the quick menu on this, I think the regular menu is kind of trashy because it just takes forever to actually access the settings that you want to access. It's kind of nitpicking, but still, that's just something that has been annoying to me. That's just like my general review of the camera as such, but I really want to get into my use case and what I'm using this for. So I'm actually thinking of using this camera as a main shooter for a project that I've been working on called Traces. So I have grown up with a lot of American influence. As you can tell, my accent is pretty American, and I have family in the US, but I have never been to the US. So I've lived in Germany all of my life. And recently I've started to think about American identity more and the way that it has influenced me. So I've been documenting these American traces that I have in my life and that I'm encountering in my everyday life, and the way that it affects me and my surroundings. I really love the combination of the natural flash mode, which takes a sequence of 2 pictures right after another, one with flash and one without, because it gives me the flexibility of having the picture with and without flash, so I can make my selection later on and I don't have to go in twice. So I shoot it with a chrome color profile in that natural flash mode, and the combination just kind of works for me. And I've also been going back and forth of like creating little animated images that are kind of flashing between the flash image and the non-flash image. So I'm just experimenting with this, honestly. But because the combination of those 2 settings works really well for me, I think this could actually become the main camera for that project. So yeah, I tend to shoot it with standard color, manual mode, and -0.7 exposure compensation on a regular day. And if I'm shooting for my project, I'm using it in the natural flash mode with the chrome color setting. The resolution for printing is enough, but I would definitely say you should probably sharpen the image before you print it in some way, because printed, the lens does look a bit muddy. I think that doesn't really translate on screen, but because your screen is backlit and the print isn't, of course, you kind of have to differentiate between the 2 a bit when you're showing the images. Showing the images from this camera on a screen is my preferred way of doing it, because I just don't think that the colors translate that well in print, but that's just my opinion and the way that I use it. I think that's pretty much all that I have to say about this camera. Like I said, it's a great everyday carry. Because it is so beaten up at this point, I just don't feel like I have to take care of it at all. It's just kind of a, I'm gonna throw it in my bag kind of situation. I don't know, something about it. This is one of those cameras where it has that X factor of just the total package makes me want to tag it along. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you all have a great day. See ya.